about how the two of you came to collaborate together in this project.
Right. Well, let's see. I was given a galley of a book called My Abandonment, which means it hadn't quite been published yet, and shared it with a producer named Ann Harrison. We were looking for something to do together, and we loved the book. We had problems with the book. I would say the last, maybe third half, we knew that it couldn't be a literal adaptation, and I've worked with a lot of books and writers, and I knew that whatever we did with this as a film was going to depart significantly from the novel, which was fine, because we kept the essence of what the author of the book was looking for. And, we loved Debra's films. We didn't know her. So we approached Debra and her co-writer, producing partner, Ann Rossellini, with this material. And I think, it took a while. You had to think and read and talk, but we were incredibly fortunate to even enter into that conversation with Debra. So that's how it happened.
I think the next stage is going to Portland, right? It was to start to go on the preliminary research trip to meet social workers, to meet people that lived in that farming area with the Christmas tree farms, to start to see what part of the novel could be married to the real landscape, and to also meet a whole host of characters from Portland that were going to figure into the story.
And was there a similar kind of real people playing themselves kind of thing going on in this?
I'd say so, from the Taft-Hartley perspective. But yes.
Many real people not playing themselves.
All those bunnies are really in 4-H.
Yeah, those really.
And but like casting, like in certain sectors, it's so rich. It's any state in this country. If you were to say, I'd like to cast some people that are involved in 4-H. Yeah. It's an embarrassment of riches. Every county has 4 clubs, and these magnificent teams to go with it, and then this happens a lot with I would say with veterans. Sometimes we meet with veterans and they inspire something or they fact check something, and then we go to try to cast it, and then we have to go back to the vet and say, could you just do the role yourself? And frequently we've gotten lucky and people have been able to participate. And I think we got ourselves in a pickle at the last, the day of shooting. One social worker, James, right. Couldn't. Like his supervisor said, no can do. But he had really been inspiring the role of James. So luckily, there was a Portland actor from local theater that could just come in a few minutes before. Or no, the night before. He crammed. There's a French director that I like the way he explains it. He's like, if you, in any given day, you're going to meet so many people that can depict some part of their life experience so beautifully. Or a person who's professional in that trade, a real waitress, a real school principal, a real, you name it. And if the camera and that process doesn't floor them, if they do what they do, usually they'll do it in a way that you can't necessarily recreate or imitate. So when possible, I do love to be able to do that. The comment is that Ben Foster is known for sort of more, roles that are actually more aggro or, intense, right? Hell or High Water, Yuma. And I think actors do seek challenges, right? So he read the script very carefully. He knew what he was getting involved with. He didn't know Thomason. She's not a known name, and I think he was when he met her, he was extremely extra inspired to really, really respond and really take on her sincerity. And another very important contributing factor was that he responded super positively to the primitive skills training. And though he did, you do see that his knife is large, So the part of Ben that likes large knives was still, was able to sort of, even though it's a knife for whittling and whatnot, he was able to sort of maybe get some of that something. But I think that Thomas kind of a muse in the end. She really was relying on him as an experienced actor to relate to her and do those tasks with her and be present to the whole process. So I think it, extruded something from him that
I just want to add one little tidbit, which is that he was also about to be a father of a daughter. So he was really thinking and taking that in and taking that seriously, and I think that had a lot to do with it.
So the question about unhoused Americans and non-conforming, living off the grid. So my understanding that Portland and Seattle, the Pacific rainforest, going and coming up from Northern California, it's actually it stretches all the way down to the Southern California, right? There's this corridor, a very migrant corridor of young Americans, teens, sometimes people call them crusty kids, but they've been doing it it's been going on for a lot of decades. So there is a very large unhoused population on the West Coast that's more visible. Oregon has a lot of progressive policies around tent cities, and they do a lot to see how to manage it humanely. They get a lot of heat from other parts of their citizenry who say, like, well, wait a minute, if you keep serving biodynamic dinners to everyone, of course they're going to come to Oregon. They're like frantic, like, why are you treating unhoused people so? Why is there so much food, so many services? So there is a split in the state, but the fact is it is prevalent. But when we were making this film, a New York Times headline came forward that the headline was, I should know this by verbatim, but it was something along the lines of unprecedented numbers of Americans living on federal land. And it was about last summer and the summer before, very steep increases of rangers encountering numerous people living in federal parks, not only in the designated campgrounds, but also in the inner sanctum of parks where it's not patrolled very much. There's precedent. There's precedent in the Olympic Peninsula, in the Vietnam era, in the mid-'80s. A lot of men, not a lot, some cohort were on federal wildland at that time, unseen for a lot of years. And 2 British film crews did very interesting documentaries about that particular group. So it's not that it's part of a bigger factor, which is increasing unhoused people in the country. So, but I think because the climate is conducive to living outdoors for a large part of the year, the West Coast gets a disproportionate and plus benevolent policy. So.